Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about AEC workflows inside of Unreal. And we'll be looking at Unreal version 4.24, so this is in preview. And we're going to be going through several things today. So the first thing I want to mention is with the release of Unreal 4.24, the Datasmith and Studio toolset, which used to be a separate download and a separate EULA, has now been merged into the base engine. So there is no longer any deviation for this. That means that Unreal Studio and Datasmith will be free moving forward, which is really exciting news for us. So you've heard the mention of Datasmith several times throughout today's presentations, and I'm going to go over it again just so that you understand what it is. Basically what Datasmith does is it gives us the ability to seamlessly get data in from a variety of different applications, whether they're DCC creation tools, things like Max or Maya, Cinema 4D, or CAD programs, Revit, SketchUp, things like that. What Datasmith does on the import is it goes through and it accurately represents the scene hierarchy of the host application. It creates materials based on that host application with names that sort of match and are similar to that host application's workflow. It also has a non-destructive re-import ability, which is very, very nice and super productive. It's worth mentioning that if you're bringing in NURBS-based data or solids-based data, that it has a full ability to tessellate and then retessellate that based on your needs. So it's a non-destructive workflow using Datasmith to get that in and out. So new in version 4.24 is an enhancement to the visual data prep tools that we have. So this gives us the ability to automate the process of taking your data in and optimizing it for real time. So it's a very sophisticated set of tools, and we'll be looking at that briefly in just a moment. It's worth mentioning that we also have things that used to be part of Unreal Studio that again are wrapped into the main build of the engine, things like the Variant Manager, which is an amazing tool for setting up easily options or different variants for your scenes. And we'll be looking at that a little bit later when I do the automotive presentation. So a couple of other things that have been added to 4.24 that we'll be checking out today are the new physically based sky and atmospheric components. Super, super fun, easy tool to work with. And let's go ahead and hop into the engine and check all this stuff out. So here we are inside of Unreal, and what we're looking at right now is the visual data prep window. And what we're going to do is we're going to be bringing in a CAD file, actually a Revit file of a piece of architecture, and I'm going to walk you through the process of how we can use visual data prep to run some operations or filter that information and do some processing on that information. So you can see over here on the right-hand side, we have a variety of different types of inputs. You can either use a folder or an individual file. So for this example, we've already got one loaded up. So let's just go ahead and click import on that. It's going to go through, it's going to bring in this Revit file. And what we have is we have on the left-hand side here, we have the preview of what the hierarchy is going to be like inside of Unreal. And then on the right-hand side, we have the data that was actually coming in from the Datasmith file that was exported out of Revit. And then, of course, we have a preview window that allows us to see, this is what that raw Revit data looks like. Now, what we want to do is we want to run a series of operations on this, and there's a variety of things that we can do. You can see on the left-hand side here, we have a variety of tools. So we can either use the filtering tools on the top here to start to query information in a variety of ways, and then below that, we have the operators that we can perform on those selections or those filtered selections that we've made. So for this example, what we're going to do is we're going to delete some objects and we're going to replace some materials, and then we'll go ahead and show you what the end result looks like in the actual preview window. So it's a very simple process, right? All we have to do is let's just say, let's go ahead and filter something. So we'll say by object name. So we're going to go in here, we're going to grab something by its object name. So we'll just wire these guys together. And what I want to do is I want to filter out these trees. So you can see that we've got these kind of little trees that sort of came in. It's worth mentioning that these trees actually now come in from Revit, so RPGs and things like that actually come across as geometry types. That's new in version 4.24. But I don't want these sort of very low polygon Revit placeholder trees. We're going to want to just delete those because I'm going to replace this with some higher quality vegetation. So all I have to do is kind of select that guy, and you can see that its mesh name is actually just set to planting, right? That's the actual static mesh name. So if I just search for a name that contains plant, it's going to go through and it's going to grab everything that has plant in it. And what we want to do is we want to perform an operation on that. So what I'm going to do in this example is something really simple. I'm just going to delete those objects. So we'll just come down here and we'll just say delete objects, and we'll just drop that on the bottom. So that's going to be our first step. The next thing that I'm going to want to do is, you can see that the windows kind of came in here, but that material that came across from Revit isn't a good looking glass, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do my next operation, which is going to just be a substitute material. Very simple to do. So we'll go in here and we'll grab substitute material, and we'll just wire those guys together. So for this, we're going to say anything that has a star, glass, star. So it's going to select all the glass in my scene using these wildcards, and we're going to replace it with, and if I just search out here for something like that guy, we're going to replace it with that. So the final thing that I'm going to do is just go ahead and add on to this a simple little cleanup node. So we'll just grab that guy to just kind of clean everything up. And we now have a chain of events that we're going to use to process this data. Now, it's worth mentioning that when you create one of these recipes, you can save this out and redo it over and over again on a series of objects or in a folder of objects. So the idea is that you will start to build up the house set of sort of little processes that you've decided or routinely do over and over again, and you can kind of rinse and repeat those effects. So with that done, we'll just go ahead and we'll just say execute. So it's going to go through, it's going to evaluate all the scene, it's going to query all the information, it's going to find all the plants, it's going to delete those, and it's going to go through and find all the glass. And after it's done, kind of working its way through all the scene hierarchy, it's going to replace all the glass materials with the DTO glass. There we go. Just like that, it went through, it did its thing. And if we kind of frame up here, you can see that we've gone through, we've replaced the glass with something that's actually transparent, as well as gotten rid of the tree. So once that's done in the preview window, I could basically go ahead and commit, and that would then actually bring it into the actual editor. So right now, everything we've done has been sort of in this little preview window. So we'll go ahead and we'll just close that out. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and start talking to you about a few of the things that have been improved with ray tracing in 4.24. So in this scene, what we're currently looking at is sort of a hybrid approach that I've gone ahead to light this scene. So a lot of the information's been baked out into light maps, so it's stored that information as texture maps, but some of it is basically also running in a non-baked manner. Things like this tree, and you'll notice that there's kind of a weird effect happening on that tree right now. What's going on is I'm ray tracing this scene, and the ray trace shadows aren't updating correctly because this tree has been built using SpeedTree. So SpeedTree has a really nice function in it that allows you to animate wind at a vertex level. So it's a vertex shader. And the ray tracer now in version 4.24 has the ability to handle that. So this is what it would have looked like in the previous release, 4.23. It just basically ray tracing and vertex animation wasn't compatible. In 4.24, we now have the ability to just throw a simple little switch on this guy and get it to behave correctly. So if we just search for an attribute in here that says evaluate world position, as soon as I turn that on now, if we escape this out, you can see that that tree is going to have this little subtle movement in there, and all the lighting is going to update and accurately be represented inside of here. So a couple of other things that we want to look at with this is some of the other ray tracing attributes. So I've actually got everything kind of turned on already inside of here. So as we look at this, you can see on that glass, we've got the reflections of all the trees inside of there. So we're ray tracing the skylight, we're ray tracing the ambient occlusion, we're ray tracing the reflections, we're ray tracing the translucent reflections, which would be the reflections in the glass materials. And we're also kind of bouncing around a few other rays inside of here. So you can notice if we come over here and look at this, this little lighting setup, if I turn off the ray tracing, we'll just kind of toggle some of these off so you can see the benefit that ray tracing brings to the table. So this is really simply done. There's several different ways of modifying ray tracing attributes. You can either use kind of global console variables that turn them on and off for the whole scene, or you can use post-process volumes. And post-process volumes are super powerful inside of Unreal. These are volumes that you define that allow you to affect the overall look of the environment. So it allows you to do color grading, the blooms, the lens flares, film grain, vignetting. All these types of effects are controlled by those post-process volumes. We also have the ability to control how the ray tracer behaves when the camera is inside of that volume. So what we're going to do is we're just going to search for post and we'll grab this outpost process volume, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here and just toggle off a few of these different ray tracing features so you can see the impact that they have in the overall look and feel. And I'll do it while we kind of are framed in on this so you can see the background scene as well as these little, this little lighting probe that I have inside here. So if we turn the reflections to screen space reflections, it's a pretty drastic change, right? So getting those true ray trace reflections is really awesome, and that's available when you're running on NVIDIA's RTX-based hardware. This is an RTX Quadro 6000 that we're currently running on. So we'll go ahead and we'll turn on the ray trace reflections again one more time, and if we kind of slide over here and look at something like the translucence information. So again, if we turn off that and go to screen space or raster space, you can see the drastic difference when those glass surfaces aren't properly reflecting the environment that they're in. Another area that you're going to see a big change or a very significant difference to the look and the quality of the render is going to be in ray traced shadows. So if we kind of slide over here and let's just kind of pull back here, what we've got going on here is ray traced shadows. So the beautiful thing about ray traced shadows is the ability for light to have different hardness and softness levels, right? So when there's a little bit of angle in the sun, it's got objects that are farther away are going to have soft shadows. So this shadow that's really soft and fuzzy is actually the shadows from the trees that are across the street. And then obviously you can see this hard, crisp shadow on that piece of geometry that's kind of coming down here on this little cut, and how you can have these layered effects. So if we turned off the ray trace shadows for that directional light, if we just search for sky and we grab this guy, and we'll just turn off the ray trace shadows, you can see the drastic difference when we have those trees with those leaves across the street making that really kind of crisp hard shadow. That's just not realistic looking, right? That's not accurate. That's not correct. So that's the beauty of ray tracing and the types of quality things that we can do with those ray tracing. Again, has to be on an NVIDIA RTX card to be able to do that. But that's just a couple of examples of how ray tracing can be used to do some really cool things. So there's a couple of other things that I'm doing in this scene. I mentioned before that the environment is a kind of a combination of baked lighting as well as active real-time lighting. So as we kind of look around this scene right here, all the geometry that's inside of the house, or actually I should say all the living room furniture that's kind of hanging out right here, this living room furniture is actually not being, it's not baked. So that's actually got live lighting. So if I grab this chair and I start moving it around the scene, you can see that it's going to update and interact in the scene the way you would expect, which is really, really pretty awesome. And this is an example of how we can still maintain these insanely fast frame rates, but get this extremely high quality look. If we look at the frame rate on this, I mean, it's probably around 10 milliseconds. Yeah, so it's a really, really fast scene, right? But it still has this extreme, beautiful visual quality, and that's what Unreal's famous for, the ability to pick and choose your battles and maintain that frame rate that you want, but still get the ultra-high visual fidelity that you need to sell sell the design to your clients and to your customers. So the other thing that we want to look at, it's kind of cool, is just a slightly different way of approaching lighting. So right now everything is sort of this kind of hybrid lighting model that I put together, and you could use a variety of different ways of approaching this lighting. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn on a different lighting scenario. So everything that we've been doing so far, has been kind of this baked lighting scenario with then some real-time geometry sort of floating in the middle of that. The next lighting scenario we're going to look at is using the new sun sky system that we talked about briefly in those intro slides. So we're going to turn off this lighting scenario, and I'll turn on another one. And what we've got here in this lighting scenario is the new sun sky system. So if we grab this guy and we just sort of hit our G key here and kind of display that guy. Oops, let's not do that. You get this little widget that lets you visualize where north is, and what you can do is you can use this to adjust the overall time of day. So if we go and we grab our details panel for this guy, and let's just not search for Ray, you can see if we grab the top of this, you can set where the sun is in your world. So you can set the lat long position, you can set the date, you can set the time. All of these things go into basically driving what the overall look is going to be. And if I start to change this time of day, as I move through this, we're going to get this sort of real-time update of that sky model and of that sun system in the actual environment. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and let's just kind of move this guy around here. We'll get the sun sort of, and you can see as it goes through the sky. Maybe if I can try to find the sun. Where is the sun at? Let's get the sun low in the sky over something like that. You can see as the sun sort of drops, that sky model does this really nice job of kind of accurately representing where that sun's going to be. You're going to get the sunspot inside of there. So as we move that through the day, you get the arc of the light. You can see as it sort of drops down here, we're going to get this really warm sort of glow sort of kind of coming across that scene. So it's really a fast, easy, accurate way of working with the lighting inside of your scene. So then the next thing that we want to do is we want to talk about some of the other features that we've been improving. So inside of Unreal, in the engine, we have several different ways of doing collaboration. Collaboration is very important to us, and we think it is to you also. So we have a couple different things that we can do. There's two different ways that you can set collaboration up. One of them is with the multi-user editor. So what that means is you can actually have multiple users inside of a level collaborating together. So I could be in there, maybe laying out some landscape, and someone else could be in there working on materials for the brick on the outside of the building, and a third person could be in there in VR as a director. So that's something that's really pretty awesome. We'll be showing that over on the pods later in the event. Another way of collaborating is using the collab template. So a lot of the workflows that we're trying to approach at Epic are building templated workflows that are going to allow you to accelerate your workflow by having a nice starting off point. So we have a few different templates that we ship with the software, and basically what they're doing is they're injecting game logic. So it allows you to bring your data into it, and we've already set up a lot of the logic for either the way it's going to work as a kind of the UI elements for it, or in the example of the collab template, we've gone ahead and we set it up so that it's got all the networking built into it. It's got the presence of each other being known built into it, and it has some really nice UI elements, and we've added some refinements to that. So let's go ahead and check that out. So let's jump back over to our levels here, and we'll get back to this one. It's going to take a second for that exposure to kind of compensate and get itself where we want it to be here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to hit play. Now, when I hit play, the way I have my play settings turned on right now, I'm actually going to spawn 2 players. So I'm going to get 2 windows up. Now, keep in mind, when we hit play, it's called Pi, so it's play in editor. What we're doing is we're simulating what the gamified version of this design data is going to be. And again, this was just a Revit file that we started off with that we prepped using the data prep tools. So when we hit play, we're simulating what the executable would be that you could hand off to someone and you could email it to them. They won't need the Unreal Engine installed on their computer to run that, because once you make a runtime or an executable, it's basically a game of that design data. So that's what we're going to be simulating when we hit Pi here. And this is, again, based off of the collab template. So as soon as we hit play, it's going to spawn off 2 windows. So this is player 1, and this is player 2. So we're actually, even though I'm only on one computer, I'm kind of prototyping what this collaboration environment is going to feel like. And the UI elements that you're seeing right here, these are all made in that template. So all the game UI stuff is done in the template. So there's several different things. We have the ability to record a session now, because this is a collaboration design review environment. So that's newly added in 4.24. We also have the ability to switch between different modes. So we have a fly mode, we have a walk mode. So if I jump into the walk mode right here, actually let's go back to that fly mode. We have a camera orbit mode. So there's several different ways of, and you just saw that camera back over here. Like that's this guy. Watch as I run around here. You can see as I move in and out. That's the avatar, because I'm in a camera fly mode. If I was in a walk mode, the avatar would be a little human. If I was in VR, you'd see the hands, you'd see the head, and which way it's looking. So what we're doing, again, is simulating what's going to be like once we make the executable of this design data. So there's a few other things that this collab viewer brings to the table that are kind of cool. If you've got bookmarks in your scene, you can save the bookmarks out. That will allow you to set jump modes. You will notice that there is a VR mode, that little headset. That was newly added in 4.23, was the ability to start and exit VR while you're in the experience. Now keep in mind, this has all the networking built into it also. So when you launch this as an executable, you can say, I want to host a session. Any computer that's on your network that can ping that computer will be able to join that session. So that's very key to the way this collab viewer works. So the next thing that we want to look at is a few of the other examples of what the UI brings to the table. So if I hold down the space bar, I get some more game logic. And again, this is all built into that templated workflow. So we can do things like X-ray different objects. So I could just say, let's apply an X-ray to that guy. And you can see as soon as I do that, it turns into an X-ray. Maybe I wanted to X-ray a couch or something like that. So this X-ray tool is a great, again, more if you're doing like mechanical engineering or something like that, where you've got an outside shell and you want to make that go to an X-ray really quickly. That's an awesome thing. Some other things that you can do with this is you can, again, set bookmarks. You can also transform objects. So if I just go ahead and click on move, now when I grab this guy, I can basically go in there and start to grab it, move objects around, objects that are set to movable. You have a laser pointer, so as I'm shooting over here with this window, you can see that I'm shooting a laser out, and then obviously if I jump over into this window and I start shooting a laser, you're going to see this player's red, and then of course, this player over here is shooting a different color. It's shooting a blue laser out. So you get this good sense of your color. The avatars you can name. There's a couple of other things that you can do with the collab template that are pretty sweet. So if we hold down the space bar, we now added in a measure tool. So you can go in here and you can basically start to draw different points out on where you want to have that measure tool go. Like maybe I want to measure from there down to here. You can see the measure tools in both windows. So you can see there's the measure point that we've just laid out inside of there. That was newly added in 4.24. And another thing that was added in 4.24, let's just go ahead and get rid of the X-ray. We'll just do a reset all for that stuff, is the ability to write some notes. So let's just get kind of framed out here where we can both see the same area. That's funny. In the reflections of the window, you can see the avatar reflecting in there because it's ray tracing, right? So that's actually pretty cool, pretty awesome. What we can do is we also have the ability to do annotating. So we can basically say, let's go in here and let's paint. And while I'm doing that, I can basically kind of come down here and I'll just write a little word. And then, of course, if we look in this window, that annotation is basically there. And as you fly around the scene, those will kind of pop on and off based on where you're at. You can obviously set where that plane is, and you can record all this information. So again, everything that I've been doing, if I wanted to record this design conversation that we had, I can basically just click the save button, and it's going to record the annotations as well as the movements that we've gone ahead and set up inside of there. So I think that's basically it for the collab. Oh, and then of course you can take snapshots. So that's going to basically just save a picture off the disk. So if you've done something and you want to email it off to your colleague after your review is over, and you don't want to have to scrub back through and kind of use that rewind function to find that information, you can always just save out the snapshot of what you've done. So that's pretty much it as far as the collab template. So we've looked at several things in this presentation. We brought data in from Revit. We used the data prep tools to process that information. We deleted some objects. We went ahead and we changed some materials. We checked out some of the ray tracing functionality. And again, the ray tracing functionality runs on those amazing NVIDIA RTX cards. Super, super fast. Very, very high quality visuals that we're going to get out of that. We checked out the new Sun Sky system as well as the collab template. So if you guys have any questions, we're here. We have people working on the pods. We'd be more than happy to try to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you for your time, everybody. Have a great Autodesk University. Cheers, everybody.